what I'm going to talk about today is a bit of a miscellaneous set of things. In particular, I want to talk about how you can contribute back to WeBWorK, and then we'll talk about some new features as people sort of want to see them. So I've got my slides going. Everyone should be able to see stuff. WeBWorK is an open source project. That means that it lives and dies based off of contributions from its users. We try and make everything available. You know, all the code is open source and it's free. Free as in beer and free as in speech and all of that stuff. But that also means that there's not, you know, a bunch of professional sort of full-time people behind it, you know, managing and supporting and doing all of that stuff. And so we really do rely on people to contribute back. And unlike something like Ubuntu, we don't have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of users. We've, you know, got maybe somewhere in the thousands, 1,000 sysadmins, and now you are among their ranks, and so there aren't that many. So you should consider giving some of your time back to, you know, support WeBWorK. That's how you can repay everything. And there's a bunch of ways you can do that. So I'm going to go through some of the more common ways. The first thing, and probably the easiest thing you can do, is to report bugs. This is actually surprisingly useful. You shouldn't assume that if you see something broken that somebody else will notice it or will fix it. Developers tend to fix the things they come across, but they also tend to have pretty set patterns in terms of how they do stuff and what, you know, tools and processes they use to go through to accomplish various tasks. And you don't always see things that are broken. So bugs are managed at this bugs.webworkmaa.org site. You should go here. You'll have to create an account to log in. Just use it, you know, your Gmail address or whatever. It's pretty painless. You should get a confirmation email, and I think you'll be done. So creating or sending in bugs is actually pretty easy, especially if you're going to do a problem bug, which are the most common types of bugs. In fact, you can encourage your instructors to do this as well. It's pretty easy. So if you come across a problem that is broken, then all you have to do is click the edit button for that problem, either here or one of the editor links over here, and then report bugs in this problem. And that will pre-fill out a bug report form. You'll have to have logged in order for this to work. Something you can do first is you can update the OPL to see if it's been fixed already. This is useful, although it's sometimes hard to do if you're in the middle of the semester and you don't want to sort of risk things by updating the OPL. If you double submit a fixed bug, it's not the end of the world. Write a summary and a description of the bug down here. You don't have to worry about components or anything, although if you know which library it comes from, you can select OPL, or you can select one of these if you know where specifically that bug is owned. But otherwise, it'll get assigned by John Jones to the right place. Bonus points if you put a fix for the bug in the description. A lot of the times, you can figure out what's wrong with the problem yourself. Otherwise, just report it and hit submit, and that's it. Submitting bugs is super easy. Eventually, a fixed version will make its way into the OPL, and then eventually you'll do apt-get pull in order to get a new version of the OPL, and that'll actually get the fixed version to your server. Submitting general bugs is also really useful. This is bugs in the interface, bugs in managing your course, that kind of thing. You do that by clicking Report Bugs down on the bottom of this WeBWorK interface here. So you're going to have to pick which component that you want to use. Really, you know, there's a bunch of these things here. Really, there's two that you're going to pick most of the time. First, WeBWorK 2, this is where you're going to put bugs in the WeBWorK interface and the course management system, everything in the WeBWorK 2 GitHub repo, so anything that has to do with the database or logging in or authentication or adding students or adding homework or that kind of thing. PG is for bugs in the problem grader system. This is different than bugs in a particular problem. This would be for like a systemic bug in a macro file or something that is always graded wrong no matter what problem it's in. You'll pick one of those. I'm going to pick WeBWorK 2. You'll pick which version you're using. You will pick which component if you know. So you can, but if it's only some of the names are a bit confusing. So for example, SetMaker is the library browser, or Problem Set Detail is the homework editor page where you actually are editing the actual what problems and what parameters are set for a homework. But you can leave that blank. In general, it'll get assigned to the right place if you don't. I'll put a summary in here. And a description. The important thing when you're writing a bug description is not just to say sort of, this is broken, could you please fix it? A bigger issue is reproducibility. So write out the steps that you're doing to reproduce the bug. In particular, make a little bit, think about whether or not it's a configuration issue. That's something that happens on the configuration issue. Or that if it's a configuration problem, it's not a bug, it's sort of local to your server, although that line gets fuzzy sometimes. So write a thorough description of what your bug is and how to reproduce it, the steps you follow in order to make it happen, and then someone will get to it. It's slower during the year, it's faster when we've got more time on our hands. Going along with this, and I guess it's not something I put in my presentation, but being active on the forums and helping other people out when they have configuration issues. So the bug report place is not the right place to put configuration problems. The configuration problems should be asked in the forums, and being active in the forums and helping out other people and looking for problems that you've already solved and have some insight on is really useful. So bug reporting is something that everyone can do, sort of no matter what your technical expertise is. Another thing that happens is OPL contributions. Now, contributing to the OPL, as we're going to see, actually requires that you have command line access and access to GitHub. So what's likely going to happen is, even if you're not interested in contributing to the OPL, if you have instructors at your university that are interested in contributing to the OPL, they will probably be asking you as their sysadmin for help with the GitHub server admin command line part of it. So this is good to know even if you don't plan on writing PG questions. So problems under development, or sort of problems that have been contributed but not reviewed, go in the contrib folder of the WeBWorK Open Problem Library. This is not by default visible to people in the library browser. You need to do some stuff in order to make it visible to people in the library browser. They're not visible by default because it's really the Wild West. There's a lot going on. They're not tested. They may be broken. But we can take a look at how to add them. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I have to switch over to my All right, so I'm logged into my WeBWorK server. You need to go to the courses directory, and this is going to have to be done for every course. If you want it to individually, if you want it done for all courses, then you should do it to the model course and use that as a template when you're copying or when you're creating courses. We want to go to the templates folder, and looking through here, You can see the link to the library sort of in the middle of the page. And you can see a bunch of def files. I've got a lot of chaff in this. What we need is we need a link to the contrib folder in the library here. So this is going to be ln-s, which is going to make a symbolic link, and we want to go opt, WeBWorK, libraries, WeBWorK Open Problem Library, contrib. This is where the folders live, and then we're going to make a link here. So if I do ls-l contrib, we should see that contrib is now a link to the contrib folder in the WeBWorK Open Problem Library. I also need to add it to the interface. That's going to be something that I can do in course.conf, or I can do it sort of globally in localoverrides.conf. So if I go I don't know if I've added it to this one or not. I'm probably scrolling too fast. I apologize. I will slow down once I get to the place. Yeah, so we're at the problem library version. We're looking at these various things. This is where you would add additional library buttons. We've got course files, problibs, and then we've got these various, this is where you would add like Dartmouth files or Rochester files. And what we're going to do is we're going to add contrib points to contributed. The key here on the left is the name of the link we made, and on the right it's the text that's going to be on the button. So I didn't actually do anything which requires me to restart my server, so I can just switch over to the web browser. So now, if I've done everything right, and I go to library browser, yep, you can see problems from contributed here. And you'll notice if I click on that, probably going to take a little bit as it loads everything up. It's searching up all the directories in contributed, and it's going to display them to me as just a list of directories. In particular, they're not sorted at all. They're not indexed by keyword. They're not sorted by subject or chapter or anything. You actually have to know the path of the problems that you want, which is going to be kind of a thing. Take a little bit for this to load since that's pretty big. All right. So that's how you add contrib to a course. What if you want to put stuff into contrib? Well, you need to have command line access and GitHub. So the first thing you're going to need is a GitHub account. So if we go here, you will have to sign up for GitHub. And once you've signed up for GitHub, you would go to the Open WeBWorK problem, the WeBWorK Open Problem Library. There's a link here. And you would click fork. Now, I'm not sure, I can't select this because I've already forked this repository, but when you click fork, you should have your own little name and icon here, and you should click that, and that will create a version of the WeBWorK Open Problem Library, including contrib here, in your GitHub online to store your changes. So I've come back to contrib, and yikes, it may be too much for this folder here. Cancel. Something else you can do is make that link to a sub-directory of contrib if you only want problems from a particular school. That will really speed this process up, or even a sub-subdirectory. So you can see there's like a bajillion files in this, and if I were just to point to Kappa or, you know, some other thing, it would be a lot better. So it looks like we might have some recursive links here, so maybe I will need to fix that. Interesting. All right. So moving on, once you've created this GitHub account, so we've gone here and we've forked our GitHub account. We need to add this GitHub repository to the WeBWorK Open Problem Library. You're only going to have to do these two steps once, but you will have to do them. Once we add this to the library, and we'll do this by adding the GitHub account that we created as what's called a remote, you're going to want to copy new problems to the contrib folder, and you basically use the Open Problem Library directory structure. You'll have contrib, you'll have your school name, subject or course, section or assignments, PG files. You'll want to include a README with your contact info inside each directory, and you should tag each problem with the subject and a chapter, which will let the maintainers know who should be editing those particular problems. And if you use auxiliary files, like an extra image or something like that, there's this resources tag that should be in the PG file as well. That's useful for when people are moving the PG files around. They can keep track of which other files they need to move in addition to the PG file. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so I'm going to go to the library, the WeBWorK Open Problem Library, and I'm going to do git remote add personal HTTPS. The S is important. If it's not HTTPS, you can't push back up to the library. You can't push changes on this machine to GitHub, so you need to have the S there. GitHub.com, your username, and then WeBWorK Open Problem Library.git. If I do git remote-v, you'll see origin, which is the Open WeBWorK one, and personal, which is mine as my remotes. So now I can go into contrib, and you see there's a bunch of different universities and whatnot. I would make a directory. I would go into WCU. I would make another directory. Let's say I'm writing for, I don't know, linear algebra. And I'd make another directory. I would say eigenvalues. And I would put my PG files here. You should definitely test your PG files. They're really not going to be heavily tested outside of what you do. And you should make sure that, you know, the stuff you're putting in contrib is going to be available to everyone in the whole wide world. So it's got to be something you're willing to share with the whole wide world. But once you have everything in contrib that you want to have in contrib, and you've got all your problems, and you've got all the directory structures and everything that you want, and you've checked it to make sure they're tagged correctly, and what I've forgotten here is a README. So I should probably go down to WCU, and I would do... So once you've got everything the way you want it, you do git commit-a. And this actually commits all the changes that I have to this folder. Now I think because I'm using Emacs, I will have to stop sharing here. Oh, I might have to add this file. So if I go to git add, that will add this to be tracked. You have to do that if you add new problems, I forgot. So you're going to have to do this for any new problem that you had. You can also do something like git add star, and it'll add all the files. So now if I do git commit -a, yeah, so you'll see that it's got new files to be created. There's a problem. You have to put a commit message. So this would be like new linear algebra problems from WCU. They are super great. And that's made the commit. But it's just on your machine now. So now you need to push it up to your GitHub repository so it's online. And to do that, you just do git push personal. And put in your username and your password. Oh, it says rejected, fetch first, so git fetch personal. I'm going to try again. Rejected, non-fast forward. Git pull personal. We'll try and pull my personal branch into this branch. Oh, personal master. Yep, okay, so this is good. So I'm merging this stuff in. This is going to be getting my branch here up to sync with the branch online. In particular, I was doing some weird testing with the README file, which you shouldn't have to worry about, but you may need to pull in the latest version of, your branch in order to make this work. Now I can view git push personal, and I might need to put master here as well since we're on the master branch. There. Now it's been updated. This will have put our latest changes onto GitHub. So if I go to github.com/daily, you can see I've got a bunch of repositories here. But in particular, I have the WeBWorK Open Problem Library. And I've got this here. And this is where my changes were pushed to. So if I go into contrib here, you can see WCU, linear algebra, eigenvalues. So I actually have, this is the folders that I added, which is what I wanted. So now what? So we did this, we committed, we pushed it. And now from the web interface, you're going to want to make a pull request. Now, this is a request for John Jones with the Open WeBWorK repository to actually pull your repository into Open WeBWork. And you got to click this little green button here. And once we click that little green button, we'll click Create Pull Request, and we'll have a nice place to put in a title and a description. And let's see how that works. So this was mine, Daily WeBWorK Open Problem Library. If I do compare, review, or create a pull request, I can do this. This is comparing this guy with Open WeBWork. This is a good thing to look at. Notice I've got my problem1.pg, which I expected to have, and let's see, I have this weird readme.md with a bunch of gobbledygook on it. That's probably not something that I want to do. So I should probably track down why that's there and get rid of it, because that seems like an unintended change. You'll notice I'm also missing my readme file that I created with my contact information, and that really should be there. So what I should really do is switch back to my X window, or my terminal. You can see the README file. I should really do git add README so that that file is added to the repository. Git commit -a, commit it to the repository. And then git push personal master to push that up to GitHub. And now if I switch back to my other window, I'll have to go back because this is out of date. I can make a pull request. Yeah, there you go. Now you can see my contrib README file. So I'm double checking which things I'm submitting and seeing if that's the files that I want and all of those things. I could create pull request, and I would say linear algebra files from WCU. These are algebra files. They are super great. You want to be more descriptive than I'm being here. Remember, the person you're committing to has no idea necessarily what your school is or what your deal is or what problems you're interested in or what you're writing, or do they have special macro files or things like that. In general, though, once you click Create Pull Request, I'm not going to because I don't want to fill up everybody's inbox with fake pull requests. It will get looked at by someone and pulled into the library reasonably quickly. Then if you do a get pull from WeBWorK in the library, you will see your files have appeared in contrib. What may happen eventually is that someone will take those files in contrib and move them over to pending, where a WeBWorK library sort of editor or maintainer will take a look at them. They will classify them, give them appropriate tags, make sure that they work, that kind of thing, and then they'll appear in the OPL eventually. Like I said, so this is what you're sort of going to be doing as a sysadmin if you're going to be putting up your files from your school into the OPL. And you're going to have to repeat this process to make changes like we did with that missing README file, or to add more problems, or just to keep your little corner of contrib up to date with what you're doing. All right. So that's contributing back to the OPL. What else can you do? You can be a part of the community. I mentioned joining the forums and really participating in the forums as a great way to do stuff. Another way you can do things, especially if you're not really inclined towards a lot of the technical aspects of stuff, is to look at the WeBWorK wiki. The wiki has a link here. You've all seen it before. It contains lots of information for instructors and authors and administrators. You can already log into the wiki with your WeBWorK forum or Moodle account. It's the same account for the forums as it is for the wiki. And this is sort of a call to action, although we make this call a lot, and it's a difficult one for whatever reason. A lot of the wiki is out of date. Too much of the wiki is out of date. If I go to getting started with WeBWorK, well, because we use the script a lot now, we don't have as many installation guides for manual stuff. I mean, these are for like 2.4. We're on 2.10. Or this is 2.9 and 14.04. So they're a little bit out of date. Better installation guides. If I go to something like, well, here's a good example of it. Take a look at this image. This image doesn't really look like what WeBWorK looks like now, and a lot of the screenshots are from old interfaces, from the Math 3 interface. And we'd really like to have screenshots and things from the Math 4 interface. So the interfaces are out of date. A lot of new features are undocumented. The WeBWorK could use some, the wiki could use some love. And the nice thing is contributing back to the wiki is super easy. You just log in and click edit, and then you edit the same way you would edit any other wiki. It supports standard sort of wiki markup language type stuff. You can sort of muddle your way through that. So if I go to a random page here and find something that's broken, I could use class list files, and I could go down to cryptid passwords. It says see below for cryptid passwords. Right. I should really edit this in order to say that we use the SHA 256 crypts now for security reasons, and that you probably don't want to do cryptid or how exactly you do cryptid. In particular, this Perl one-liner is not correct anymore and needs to be changed, and I would need to replace it with the appropriate commands. So when you figure out how to fix or install something, you should consider putting it on the wiki. Is another good way to contribute back. And it doesn't require a lot of messing around with GitHub. You already have the account for it. And for better or for worse, contributions to the wiki aren't really reviewed a whole lot. So you can just type whatever you want, and it'd probably be a while before it was actually looked at and caught. So that's freeing and also a burden. All right. Finally, we've got writing code. This is used sort of for a lot of different things, and the procedure is very similar to what you would do for the OPL. So I'm not going to go through a lot of it just because Mike's already talked a little bit about this, and, you know, I just want to point out some of the things. You need a GitHub account to submit code as well. You would fork these two things, although I believe forking any one of these actually ends up forking the entire WeBWorK repository. So if you already forked WeBWorK problem library, it's the same thing. You're going to also get forks of these things as well. You're going to have to add your GitHub repository, which is exactly the same thing we did for adding the repository for the WeBWorK Open Problem Library, but you're going to have to do it for WeBWorK 2 NPG. Notice again, the HTTPS is important. You're going to do git add personal HTTPS GitHub, your username, and then WeBWorK 2 for WeBWorK 2, and PG for PG. The main thing you have to understand is that the OPL, there's really only one branch. There's the master branch, and you work on that branch, and you make your commits to that branch, and you pull to that branch, and that's pretty much it. We don't really worry about different branches and the whole branching structure for the OPL. We do worry about it for actually writing code for the PG and WeBWorK 2 side of things. And we've got some documentation for this on the GitHub wiki, because GitHub is what people are using, so it seemed like the appropriate place to put it. In particular, we're going to have different branches. You're probably never going to be working off of the master branch because that's usually only small, important changes. You're almost always going to be working off of the develop branch. And there are sort of rules about what you're allowed to pull into what branch. So, for example, you shouldn't pull develop into your feature branches, or you shouldn't pull master into your feature branches. You shouldn't pull feature branches into each other. What you should really do is, when you want to create a new feature, create a feature branch off of develop, work on it, maybe occasionally pull develop back into that feature branch, and that's it. And you should keep separate features on separate feature branches, and so it's sort of a whole thing. In particular, if you sort of look at coding and workflow, it's got a walkthrough of what you should be thinking about and how to test these things, and sort of how we go about doing our release stuff. In particular, like I said, you hardly ever work on develop proper. In order to keep things separate, you have what are called feature branches. So if I want to make a new edit or a new type of view or change something somehow, I would say, all right, I'm going to check out a new branch called my special thing. And then I would work on that branch, and I'd commit to that branch, and I'd push that branch to my personal GitHub repository. And then on GitHub, you would make a pull from that branch to WeBWorK. And then you would change the target branch to develop, and you write a description. So, for example, looking at mine, not this, let's go to GitHub again. If I look at my branches, you can see I've got a lot of these different things for various different stuff that I'm working on. I don't have very good names. This is for the just-in-time set stuff. This achieve GW is for adding achievements to gateways. So that's something that I haven't put onto WeBWorK 2 yet. So if I had submitted everything to that I liked, and I'd made all my commits, I'd switch to the Achieve Gateway branch, my feature branch. I'd make a pull request. One thing you have to keep in mind is that I've based this as off develop, and it should really be going into develop. It shouldn't go into master. I can tell because too many files are changing. It's got too much stuff. There's too many commits. If I change this to develop, then this is just going to be my changes, right? My 7 commits, the 11 files that I changed. I would go through and I would double check that the files that I changed had the changes that I want, that I don't have any extra changes in them. I should really test all of this stuff, white box testing, so I'd test each line of code, black box testing, so I would test the functionality of it to make sure all of the things do what they're supposed to do. Give it a good review, because this is the most review it's going to get. We do a lot of code review, but not as much as you're going to do on your own code. And then I'd create a pull request, and I would put a better title, and then I'd put a description, and the description for code pull requests needs to be a lot more thorough. It needs to include what you're doing, what does it add, and then how to test your changes. What should I do in order to test the various changes and things that I've made. In particular, it should automatically merge. Mine can't automatically merge, and so this pull request would not be valid. Someone would get back to me and say this needs to merge into develop before you can pull. So you remember I had that Achieve Gateway branch? And it said it couldn't merge. That's because there's a conflict. Now, this is something that you generally only have to worry about if you're doing coding, but it can come up if you're customizing your server and you end up changing WeBWorK files somehow. And if you change WeBWorK files, sometimes when you do get, pull, origin, well, it'd be master or develop or whatever you're dealing with, probably master for you if you're just running a production server, you will see something like this. Auto-merging, and then it says conflict. And this is important. This means that changes that you made to WeBWorK are conflicting with changes other people made upstream from WeBWorK. And so that's bad. We need to fix that. You can't just sort of ignore it and make it go away. In particular, I think if I tried to do Apache control restart here, I'm pretty sure it's going to go blagga, 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 blagga. It's not going to like it very much. No, it did work. No, it didn't. See, you got this syntax error stuff. It's not going to work. So we need to fix those files. So if I do git status, if you lose that page, that's where you can see things. Unmerged paths, both modified. This is the problem file right here. This is the file that we need to worry about. Untracked files are just files that I got hanging around that we don't need to worry about. So I would need to edit that file. What was that again? Live Apache WeBWorK. That's going to open in a new window. Okay, so I'm going to do a search for ... or, arrow. So what this is doing is this is where the conflict is. So what we've got here is we've got code that is at the head, which is where I'm at now in my branch. And then this is code that wants to be merged in, and it's confused. So right now I have nothing here, and my branch wants to add this line in. Now, I look at this line and I say, I don't even know why this line is here. It's setting warning equal to warning, which doesn't do anything. So I can probably just go with the blank version of that. So I have to delete all of that stuff and just leave code that I want to be there. And then I need to look for more of those. I don't see any, which means that was the only commit. Now I need to commit my changes. you'll notice that you've got an automatic message here. If you try and pull and you get this edit and it says merge branch something 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 onto something something, but you don't have any conflicts, you can just save and be done with it. That means the merge was successful. It had to shuffle things together, but it worked. Here we had some conflicts. I made sure that I fixed them. I did. So I would write this and I'd exit, and now I have merged my commit. So that's sort of useful if you do run into things. But I mean, I had to know what the code was there, right? I had to know what I was doing and why that code was different. So in general, you want to avoid them if you can.